Hi, good morning. Today is February 14th, Valentine's Day, 2026, and it is 11:45 a.m. My name is Rinaldo J. Aguiar Marcano, and this is demo D110, demo 110. We're gonna just run a couple of errands, and in the meantime, I'm going to give you a few things that I have marked down. Yes, so the first item, I'm going to split this in small segments because I'm going to just drive nearby. It's not going to be a long trip. So the first one, I was doing QA on the previous demos, and I realized that I did not explain very well, with much detail, the rope strategy, the legal strategy of the legal vaccine. I mentioned what it does, but I didn't mention the mechanics, right? So I'll get into more detail into that. So the idea is, let me tell you what the challenge was, right? So what I was trying to do, the pipeline, right, with this strategy that came up from the pipeline, was the goal was to get into that civil rights case, meaning 4:25-CB-04890, in front of Judge Hittner, to get in the record the complaint and the evidence, like the evidence of fraud in all these courts, right? All the state courts. So for that, I filed the second amended complaint, the third amended complaint, the fourth amended complaint, and in the third and the fourth, there was hard evidence. Like there was these documents that showed fraud, like the temporary orders themselves, the notice of entry. Like I'm not gonna get into the details, but there was hard evidence that if the DOJ sees them, these people will be put in jail immediately, right? So the challenge was that when I filed that, I filed the complaints and I attached as exhibits, multiple exhibits, like 4 or 5 exhibits, the evidence, right? But Judge Hittner struck the complaints, from the record. He did not, because when you file a complaint, you file it, the original complaint, and then if you want to make a change, you can amend it, but you have to ask for approval from the judge for the amendment. That's the challenge, right? You cannot just amend the complaint. The judge has to say, okay, you can amend it. So that's the challenge. And the judge, of course, said no, right? And it's within his discretion, right, to say no. But if there has to be a strong reason. The principle is that if it's in the interest of justice, it should be approved, right? It cannot be like a capricious, denial. There has to be a strong reason, right? But he, of course, abused his discretion and he said no, right? And sorry. When he did that, he also struck the complaint completely from the record, right? So he basically removed it, right? That was on the third amended complaint. Then it came the fourth, right? So I gave him, a stronger rationale of why the complaint should be amended, new evidence and all those things, right? Because there were new things that came into play. This is interesting. So anyhow, he also denied the request, the motion to amend the complaint for the fourth amended complaint, and he struck it again from the record, right? So twice, 2 times he struck, and in this fourth amended complaint, he was named as a defendant, right? Which is more damning because he basically is removing evidence from a record that names him as a defendant. But anyhow, that's what he did, right? So the challenge is that, you know, no matter in which way I try to get the evidence to stay in the record, he would remove it, right? And I needed to be on the record for when there is an appellate review, they have no excuse to say that they are not aware of the crimes, right? Well, that was a challenge, right? And at the end, Judge Hittner, so the clerk, did not issue the summonses, right, which is the document necessary to serve the defendants. I filed a motion directed to the judge to compel the clerk to issue the summonses. And the judge denied that motion. Of course, because he's not going to approve, he's not going to grant a motion. So the summonses get issued and I can sue him personally, right? So he's doing that to protect himself. But anyhow, he did that as well, right? And then he threatened with dismissing the entire lawsuit because I have not served the defendants, but I have not served them because the clerk did not issue the summons and he shielded the clerk. And this is a ministerial duty. Like the clerk has to issue the summons. Like there's no discretion on that. If you file a lawsuit, it's the job of the clerk to issue the summons. It's like there's no decision to make, right? But anyhow, so that was the challenge, right? So he threatened with dismissing the lawsuit, which at the end he did, right? On that basis, exactly. So on a pretext created by himself, right? So the status is the case is dismissed and there is no evidence in the record because he removed it twice, right? So this is where the brilliance of this strategy of the pipeline kicks in, right? So the strategy is okay because the fifth, so the appellate court of the Fifth Circuit is also, I mean, the clerk of that court is also named as a defendant because they already obstructed justice there in 2 cases. So for that reason, I could go to the Supreme Court, right? And also there's another thing called the All Writs Act, which basically gives the Supreme Court, supervisory powers for writ of mandamus and things like that over any court below it. So I could go to the Supreme Court. So the strategy was go to the Supreme Court and file there, right? And attach the exhibits. Now, the Supreme Court is not going to scratch the exhibits. Like they have no reason to because this is an original complaint, right? So they cannot do the same thing that Judge Hittner did because there's no reason. Like they have to docket this thing, right? That's one part. The second part is because when Judge Hittner denied when he dismissed the case, I could have gone directly and appeal it, right? But there's no evidence in the record. I mean, the evidence of fraud, because he already removed it, right? That's the challenge that this strategy solves. This is the rope, the strategy, right? What I'm describing. This is what it solves. So there was no evidence on the record, the evidence of fraud, because he removed it from the record. I mean, Judge Hittner removed it from the record twice. So the strategy lies on filing with the Supreme Court and attaching their exhibits, right? Remember, at the point that he dismissed the lawsuit, I could have gone directly to the Supreme Court, but the strategy was to not do that, right? To wait. Right? And that's exactly what I did, right? Then I filed with the Supreme Court, attached the evidence there as exhibits, and then I filed a motion again, in this case with Judge Hittner, a motion to reconsider, right? Which is a legal recourse that I have, asking him, think about this again, in light that there is new evidence, new facts, right? The new fact being, this is now being reviewed by the Supreme Court. I just filed this with the Supreme Court. Please reconsider. And I attach as an exhibit in that motion the filing with the Supreme Court, which in turn has the evidence of fraud attached as exhibits. You see? So this is a motion that he cannot, he can deny it, which he did, but he cannot strike it from the record because he has no reason to. This is just a motion, right? This is not a motion to file. This is a motion actually filed. So he cannot remove it. And therefore, he cannot remove the evidence, right? The evidence of fraud in all the other courts and obstruction and all that. So now the evidence is on the record. And now the master stroke is, now I'm going to appeal. But what I'm going to appeal is not the dismissal of the case. I'm going to appeal the denial of the motion to reconsider, which has the evidence directly attached, right? So now the judges on the Court of Appeal of the 5th District have the duty to review docket entry 61, which is his order denying the motion to reconsider, and they also have the duty to review the motion itself, which is docket entry 60. So they have to review two things: docket entry 61, which is his order, and docket entry 60, which is the motion that I filed that has the Supreme Court filing that in turn has the evidence of fraud in all these courts. So, this is a ministerial duty that the Court of Appeals of the 5th Circuit cannot escape, right? They have to perform this duty. So that's the master stroke, right? So appealing, I'm not even appealing the dismissal. I'm appealing the denial of the motion to reconsider. That's what I'm appealing, right? And that forces the hand of that panel of justices, right? They have to review docket entry 60 and 61, which, they cannot say that they did not see the evidence of all this fraud, right? So this is why I made that comment, that if you want to think about, if you want to see this visually, what is happening really is, the pipeline manufactured this rope, gave it to Judge Hittner. Judge Hittner used it, and now he's passing it to the judges on the Courts of Appeals of the 5th Circuit, right? And now they have to see what they do with the rope, right? Now, the problem with the rope is that as it gets passed along, because, there's more people in the chain that will get this rope, right? If this chain is not stopped. But the problem with the rope is that it grows, right? As it travels, I mean, this is kind of a special rope, right? As it travels through the space and time, it grows, right? Because now there is more collusion. There is more people that are contributing to this to furthering the scheme, right? So I don't know. It seems like a self-reinforcing cycle of destruction, basically, right? But that's the brilliance of that strategy, right? And that's why I'm not concerned, because I know I'm going to win this, right? There is no way, there is no possible mechanism they can stop the cycle. It doesn't exist, right? If the Court of Appeal, doesn't take action on the serious allegations of criminal activity, these are crimes, right? I'm not talking about malpractice, or these are like a RICO enterprise level crime, right? So if they don't take action on this thing, they just become complicit, right? And then it will escalate to the next level, and the same situation will arise, but now at a higher level, right? With more liability for more people, right? And if at that level it doesn't get resolved, it will escalate again to a higher level, and this will never stop, because it's hard evidence of fraud that is recorded on a federal docket. This ain't going away, So that's the challenge. That's the challenge for them. It's a situation that it's unstoppable. So So that's the explanation of what that strategy works. That's the reason. And that's the brilliance of it is not appealing the dismissal of the case. It's appealing the order, the denial of the motion to reconsider, right? Which is the one that has attached the exhibits of the fraud, right? The evidence of the fraud in all these courts over 10 months by attorneys and judges, right? So that's the brilliance of it. Now, yes. So I started running experiments on the visual recognition system that I have with the historic imagery and the footage that I have. Playing with this idea of they're sending the encryption key by putting objects in these trailers that they tow with trucks, right? Like landscaper trailers. Like imagine a trailer, or an open trailer, right? Like it doesn't have a roof on it. And they put landscaping equipment like grass cutters or mini tractors, right? Like John Deere or Husqvarna, I think it's called that brand, like the orange equipment for landscaping. So they put this equipment in the trailer, and the trailer, of course, is open, so it's visible from the sky. And those objects form patterns, and those patterns have a meaning, right? And that meaning is a seed for the encryption key to be computed. That's the theory, right? So I've been playing with this idea, and I built a couple of analytical pipelines, and I already started getting good results. So one thing that seems apparent from this is early work. I want to say that, right? It doesn't have mathematical rigor. It's just early work. But I see future in this, right? So I'm gonna say it in case anybody out there has cycles, right, or resources to work on these ideas, because these seem to be promising, right? I mean, as a data scientist, you see these things, although you cannot prove it yet, but you see that this could be, right, that this could lead somewhere. And so that's where I am. So I'm gonna share it early. So if anybody's watching this, you can take advantage of what I already did, right? So one observation is that when the trailers, with the trucks with the trailers, the landscapers and the all those the Mendes, Lanker, and all those companies that they have, right, the Blue Goat, those people, when they pass on Britton Ridge with their attachments and the trucks, shortly after or before, there's also a vehicle passing at low speed in front of the same house, right? This leads me to a theory. I cannot, well, and the other thing I can tell you, because I have a spectrum analyzers, like my house is equipped with equipment to watch the radio frequency spectrum in different areas, right? So I can even detect directionality with what I have. So I mix that data from the video feed from the cameras with the data from the radio spectrum analyzers that I have. And it seems to me that what they're doing is that they're splitting the key into two pieces. Not the key, the seed, right? So what I described in demo 109. So this seed the seed for the encryption key is not really one seed. It's splitting in two pieces. And they transmit one piece with the truck that is carrying the attachments, and the second piece with NFC, right, with near field communication, which in their case, is not very good. I'm gonna tell you this: it spills a lot. So even when they transmit to Miko's house, to John Miko's house, or to the other Chinese safe house next to me, I can still get something, right? So it seems like they're splitting the seed into two pieces. That's what they're doing, right? So, I mean, this is more secure than what I thought yesterday, because, you have to intercept the key, to reproduce the key, you have to have a lot of insider knowledge. You have to know the location of the exchange. You need to be able to be capable to intercepting two different mediums, right? One that requires vision from the sky, meaning the encoded images in the objects that are in the attachment, right? And at the same time, you need to be able to intercept NFC, which requires physical presence, very close by. So you have to own one of the houses next door, right? So you see, this requires there's a lot of conditions to meet, right? So that's why it's difficult. So that's one observation, that they're probably splitting the key in two halves, or two pieces, right? Well, the key, the seed, right? And then those two inputs are needed to compute the viable key. So that's one observation of this. The other one that's important is, yes. So I started, I'm not gonna describe what I did, but so I created like a pipeline, right, that does some analysis on footage that I have. And so looking for potential, large objects that are movable and things like that. And flagging pieces or segments of footage, right, of things that could be, right, these markers that they use to signal dangerous situation, or operational markers, basically, right, for satellites. And there was one instance that got flagged that is super interesting. I think it could be even a smoking gun. So I'm gonna describe it. Just one second. Yes. So I'm gonna describe it, okay? So I think it was, when was that? I can't recall the date. I have to look it up, but, and this is documented in the book and everything, right? So there was one instance a few months ago where I discovered that they, that they were using power line communication, specifically in Robert Mueller's home, right? At Lake Pointe State. This is the type of communication where you use high tension wires to modulate electronic signals, to pass data through the electrical wire of high tension. It's not even 120 volts, but more elevated tension than that. So the next day after I published a demo about this, about Robert Mueller and his modem, the next day, in less than 24 hours, a crew of workers came to Valleyside Drive, my other home, to excavate on the sidewalk. And they removed a large piece of equipment from that sidewalk, which I then hypothesized that they must have been removing a similar modem, because in that street, the electricity is not, the tension lines are not overhead, but they're buried underground, right? Unlike the power line that Robert Mueller has for this modem, which is visible from the street. You can see the power line, right? But in Valleyside, that power, don't get me wrong, in Lake Pointe State, the power line is also, this guy has been watching me for like 10 minutes from here. It's Romeo Papa Whiskey 8575. It's a white Honda, and it's a woman, Indian. So anyhow, how do I say this? Let me check one thing. So, yeah, they're desperate. I don't know what's going on with them today, but they're really desperate. They look like okay, this is Victor Delta Lima 4802. It's a Tundra. And he's more or less prominent, let me tell you that. Okay, so that car got flagged. Sorry, one second. Papa Mike Golf 5575. Authorities should really come to this street. I recommend it. This also got super flag. Honduras Victor Kilo 5529. It's a Jeep. I mean, all these cars have super high score, like to the roof. Like these people are like the, I don't know, upper level management. All this street. Let me tell you the name of this street. This is River Moss Lane with Alder Spring Lane. But the important ones, all these vehicles super flagged, are on River Moss Lane, which is a no outlet street. So I really recommend this street for the FBI, I imagine, right? Anyhow, where was I? Yes, so after I mentioned that in that YouTube video, in less than 24 hours, this crew shows up to remove something from the curb. Like they excavated and they removed something from the curb. But that's not the, that's already known, right? But what's interesting is in the footage, two objects got flagged. One, so when they did this, right, they set up, and the footage is public. I put it on YouTube already, months ago, right? I don't have the link with me, but you can see it, right? You can look it up on the Rapid Fire Tips channel. So the thing is, what they did, right? They brought in total, I think, what was 4 or 5 vehicles, right? Trucks and work vehicles. One was positioned on the intersection of Valley Side and Lara Creek, so basically blocking the street, right? Well, not blocking the street, but like capturing the view of all the intersections, right? Because that's a strategic point. That's why that agent is in that corner, the one with the gray truck. So they put one there. They put another one in the corner where the Cuban agents are, right? In that corner, like 2 houses away from my house at Valley Side. And then they brought a truck that was towing a Caterpillar excavator, and they brought, which is excavator that they used to, I imagine, right, to remove the equipment. To be honest, I couldn't see if they took the Caterpillar out of the towing trailer. I think they didn't. So they must have dig the hole with another thing. But they brought this Caterpillar, and they brought another truck that had another attachment that was towing a block of concrete, but a huge block of concrete. It's the size, more or less, of a compact SUV. To give an idea of the size of that block of concrete. It's a block of concrete that would look like those blocks of concrete that are used to build highways, something like that. So the separators in the highway. It's one of those. But it's huge. It's bigger than this car, right? So these 2 objects got flagged. The Caterpillar and they were positioned one next to the other, right? And this block of concrete that is huge. If you look at that block from above, it would look like a perfect square of beige color, right? Of concrete color. So the theory is, the hypothesis is that these 2 objects together form a marker of something critical is going on here. Remember, they were removing a modem exactly, probably equal to the one that Robert Mueller, who was the director of the FBI for several years. I mean, this is a world-level player in intelligence and, statecraft. And there's a child that is kidnapped. 2 houses from that kidnapped child's house, there is another modem exactly the same as Robert Mueller, who I have already said that is implicated in this conspiracy, right? In this criminal conspiracy. So of course, this is a high stake situation for them. The removal of that second modem, because that is hard evidence, right? If the FBI or somebody comes digging into this place and find that modem, there is a direct link to Robert Mueller, right? So, yes. So the hypothesis is that those 2 objects, towed objects in these attachments, the Caterpillar and the huge block of concrete, were actually markers. And to mark the significance, to be seen from a satellite, that this place, something really critical or dangerous even is happening, right? And then that way, through the other communication channels that they have, they can spread information to agents they have in law enforcement, in other places, right? To make sure to, watch out for, the FBI or, things like that. So, if somebody approaches the area, these people would get a warning, right? An early warning that would allow them to either, speed things up or abort, right? Or destroy the equipment, I don't know, right? But it was obviously important for them to keep, real-time checking capabilities on this situation that was unfolding, right? So this house is important, 3711. What street is this? I'll tell you in a second. And I know that because it has one of the whiskey vehicles outside. I'll give you the plate in a second. No, these streets are amazing. I mean, it feels like this is where the important people live. It's not. I mean, operational people, right? This is where they are. Wow, this is amazing. To be honest, I've never driven on this street. That's why I haven't seen it. Like through all these 2 years, I've never gotten into one of these streets. So this street is called. This street doesn't even have a name on Google. It's so important that they remove the name from the street, from the Google Maps. But it's next to Breton Shore Lane, perpendicular to it. So this house is important. 3807. This one has the flag marker, and this one is 3727. And this other one also has the flag marker, and has this whiskey vehicle outside. So this is more important, right? So this is the most important of the three. So this is 3711. And the whiskey vehicle is Frank Victor Nicole 8801. It's a Tahoe white. And here we're going to see the name of the street. So the name of the street is Gable, G-A-B-L-E, Grove, Grove Lane. That's the name of the street. Well, for the agents listening, the reason I got into this street was because you were watching me from here, right? So if you watch me, I'm gonna get into your street. That's the message. If you start like lurking like that woman on the white Audi was doing, if you do that, my reaction is going to be, I'm going to get into your street and I'm going to scan it. So you see personal liability, right? Because this is definitely gonna get to the FBI. Okay, so that's that. Yes, so the system picked up, flagged this event because of these two huge objects with distinctive color, right? In this highly important or critical event for them. And I'm mentioning this because this could lead to detection. I mean, if I was the authorities, at first I would verify what I'm saying, right? Like look at the footage on Valleyside Drive around the time of when I recorded and posted that video on YouTube, right? And you will see that I'm telling you the truth. And in fact, the video is visible on YouTube. I'll post the link along with this video in YouTube. And then after you do that, look at the objects and try to find historical imagery that matches this, right? A caterpillar with a block of cement next to it, right? And see what happened in that area when that happened, right? Yeah, so he's doing this just so I get it slow, and then the other guy can capture that. So it's I think it's a two-step process, right? You can verify that what I'm saying is exactly like this, and then you can check for other occurrences, right, that have happened in other places, even in other countries, right? And I'm fairly confident that you will see that this is a thing. So far I've learned that they're probably splitting the seed into two halves at least, and I imagine this depends on the level of risk, right, or the level of security that they want to give to the channel. Maybe some maybe Pointe State is split in two, but maybe somewhere else it's not, right? And then now I'm gonna tell you something. This is completely a hunch, right? But it's based on having fought them for 25 years, right? And I've seen the things that they do and how they think, right? I don't know how to tell you this, but so in the observation so far, right, is that they place the visual cue for the seed, for the satellite, in the geographical place where the event is going to occur, okay? Like, for example, at Pointe State, they would pass the truck carrying the attachment with the objects, the bright objects, and send the NFC command to the house, right? that's what they will do. But another variation of this that would be even more secure and knowing the scale of and the way they think, more than the scale, the way they think, right? Because I've been dealing with them for a while. And then again, I cannot verify it, but it's a hunch, right? I would look for instances in which they pass the object on the similar coordinates, but changing the sign of either the latitude or the longitude or both. So for example, so meaning, you would look for an equivalent place on the other side of the hemisphere, so on the other hemisphere, or on the other side of the planet, right? So for example, if you're in Houston, say that the latitude here is, I don't know, 95, minus 95, 95 minus 76, or something like that, right? So I would look for an object in the exact same coordinates, but minus 95, minus 76, right? Or, so play with the signs, right, of the latitude and the longitude. And I think, because, like what the idea is, what I said yesterday, right? I said yesterday something like, you can put the object in Italy, right? But the problem with that is that you would have to keep a state. I'm telling you as an engineer, right? As a software engineer, you will have to keep a state. You have to have a database of, where is the location for this important exchange, right? So, I mean, what is the location of the seed for this important exchange to happen, right? But just the existence of that database is a weakness, because that database could be captured, right? So they're not going to do that. But one way to solve this problem is to play with the signs of the coordinates. So you just change the sign, so you just know, right? So for example, level 1 of security, so you have tier, let's say tier 0 is, normal security, right? Tier 1, actually, it makes more sense to make the lower tiers more secure, right? So let's say tier 4 is normal security, in which, the seed, the visual seed for the satellite, and the NFC exchange are both in the same geographical location, in front of the house of Joel Great or John Miko or Robert Mueller, right? Well, actually, that's a good example. Let's say that tier 4 is John Miko and Joel Great, okay? But there's another tier more secure, tier 3. In this tier, you change the latitude sign. If it's positive, you turn it negative, right? And there's where you're going to look for the object, the visual object for the seed. So this way you don't need a database, right? You don't need a database to tie the security level to the actual location of the seed, right? You just need to know that this is a tier 3 person, right? And that you need to, because of that, you know that you need to change the latitude, right? Now you also have a tier 2 person, which would be like Robert Mueller or Greg Abbott, right? So for them, you change the other one. You change the longitude, right? So for this one, you're going to change the sign of the longitude, and there's where you're going to put the visual cue for the satellite, for the seed, right? And you have another tier, which will be the president of a country, like Diosdado Cabello, right? Who is the real president. So for him, you're going to change the 2 signs, right? You're going to negate the latitude and the longitude. And there's where you're going to put the cue, right? So you see, with this, you can build a tier system of security. The location of the seed is completely separate and isolated from the location of the exchange, from the NFC exchange, basically, for the key, right? So you're going to send the 2 pieces the 2 pieces for the seed, you're going to send them in 2 different geographical locations, right? And then you don't need a database, right? To keep track of, all you need to know is the rule of, computing the location for the seed. So the function, basically. And you need to know the tier of the agent. And that you can tell from the UA index, right? As I can tell, the tier from the UA index. If I can tell, they can tell, right? So that's the idea. That's the technique. So that's another way to do it. But now all this thinking, right? Because as you can see, I've been thinking about this problem for the last 3 days a lot. But all this thinking led me to think about something else, which is legislation, right? and I don't know, like I'm not, I've never worked in lawmaking or anything, so I really don't know what I'm talking about, right? But from what I can tell, the communications, at least in the U.S., are regulated by an entity like the FCC, right? The Federal Communication Committee, right? But the problem, you see the problem here, right? The problem here is that the rest of us, we are exchanging our encryption keys using mediums that are regulated, and that regulation is enforced by the FCC. But the Chinese are sending their encryption keys by mediums like colors. So things on the visual spectrum of light, right? The visible spectrum of light. So this is a problem because this means that the Chinese are operating a communication system on a completely different set of rules, right? So while the rest of us have to transmit our encryption keys in channels that travel through equipment manufactured by the Chinese, they are transmitting their encryption keys using light, right, and the air, and things that are visible from the skies on satellites that they control or that other countries control. So this is a problem, right? But now it gets deeper than that. The problem really is that the FCC doesn't have jurisdiction over what you can see. They only have jurisdiction over the radio frequency spectrum, as I understand it, but maybe I'm wrong, right? So, yeah, I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is that what this really means is that to fix this, to deal with the Chinese, it requires a deep change, not in regulation, but in the functioning of the institutions of the state, meaning the charter of responsibilities of the FCC has to change, or something, or some other entity has to emerge, right? That is not maybe it's not even the FCC, right? But somebody has to regulate what is visible. I mean, because obviously the problem is that the Chinese are using the visible spectrum of light as the means of communication, and that is not regulated. You cannot regulate what you can see with your eyes, right? You can only regulate through the FCC what you can receive with an electronic device, not with your eyes. Who regulates that, right? So I mean, it's a challenge that I think it's unprecedented, right? And it requires not even legislation. It requires rethinking the framework of legislation, right? Like the entire framework, not even of legislation, of government. It requires rethinking the frameworks of functioning of the state. And when I say state, I don't mean the United States. I mean all states, right? Like all countries, because all countries have the same problem. So you see, the deeper issue here, I guess, right, philosophically, if you think about it, what really happened was the Chinese figure out that if they communicate using visible light that anybody can see, this is impossible to regulate. And if they do this in a way that is impossible to detect and intercept, like, for example, like the ways I've been describing, then nobody can intercept their communications and nobody can regulate what they're doing. Right? That's the challenge. While at the same time, they can intercept what everybody communicates because they have control of the companies that produce this electronics and the software, right? That produce these encryption keys that the rest of the world is using. So that is what led to this situation, is that asymmetry. Exactly. That is the problem. That is a real problem, right? If you take away that capability they have of communicating secretly and nobody being able to intercept their keys, and at the same time remove their ability to intercept our keys, the problem is solved. Like, it will solve itself organically because they will get caught committing crimes and they will be put in jail, right? And then the problem stops. Like, if they're out of circulation, then there is no problem, right? But the problem really is produced by the impunity of the asymmetry, right? So the impunity in the crimes that gets produced by the asymmetry in terms of being able to transmit keys securely. So I think the problem is not really the weakness of what I'm saying is, the technical problem is not even the weakness of the technology or the control over the electronics, or the problem is really the keys. That's the problem, the transmission of the keys, that they have a way to transmit their keys that is secure and the rest of the world doesn't. That is the real disadvantage, right? And that's what led to this situation. And that's why it's important to start intercepting their keys. Right? That's why I'm putting so much effort in thinking about this problem. Because it's a way to, restore symmetry into the situation. But I can tell you, observation, I have to run this footage to the pipeline, but they're going crazy. Like today, their behavior as a swarm, right? It's chaotic. It's not, like that something is going on. Like, it's like they're throwing all the cars they have, right? They're throwing so much energy into the environment that it looks like chaos, Like, for example, this truck, and it's just chaotic. But it's because they're throwing too much at it, right? They're putting too much energy into the same place. Uh-oh. So they're gonna block me here. Okay. Understood. I understood. Yes. So this guy who was blocking me there. Right now he's going to block me here. So this is Tango Nicole Bravo 3436. So he was blocking me. I go on the other street to avoid him, and then he advances. Only after, I try to get past him. Yes, but as I was saying, it looks chaotic, right? Like the environment that they're creating with all this nonsense is chaotic. And the driving behavior. Speaking of which, I put something on the channel. I'll say it here just so it gets into the videos. Something happened this morning. The house of John Miko. So there is a signal that I've seen before multiple times. These agents, all of them, they always have a way of driving out of their homes, and this is part of their routine. A particular agent, if they always take a right turn when they exit their house, they will always consistently do that. And it is a signal when they drive on the opposite direction. And I've seen this before in multiple times. I'm not going to describe the situations, but so John Miko's house gave that signal. It's a kind of an emergency signal. They gave that signal today, meaning a car that is not the regular car that they use regularly, right? Not that spy SUV that they have, but another car came out of the garage and drove on the opposite direction, meaning, so they usually take Britton Ridge towards the exit, but this time that car took Britton Ridge towards Robert Mueller's house, and that is a signal on itself. So it could be that something is going on, right? I put that together with the fact that they're acting so erratically, and I have to think that something is happening, right? Like maybe somebody got in trouble, maybe somebody got interviewed, I don't know, but something must be going on, because it's two coincidence, right? Like John Michael giving the signal this morning, maybe 2 hours ago, and then they driving like this, right? Collectively, like all of them, right? So I don't know. If the informant is listening to this, please, let me know what's going on. I'll go check messages later. I'll be right back. All right, we're back. Let me see where we left off. Yes, on the subject of the attachments, right? Uh, one weakness that they have, at least here in Katy, in Texas, is that they require a registration with the DPS, or if you're in a different state, it would be the DMV. So this is traceable, right? I mean, I'm not saying that everybody who has an attachment, a trailer that is registered, is in it, but the registration has an address, and if that address is marked in the UA index, that means that that person is one of the people sending the keys to Beijing, right? To enable these people to commit these crimes. So I imagine that's high liability. And these people are easy to flip, I think, because they're usually landscapers, and I mean, don't be fooled by that, right? There's some landscapers that are actually, that's the cover, right? They're actually, high-level intelligence. But more often than not, they could be, people that are not getting paid a lot of money, and they have a lot of liability because they're enabling with this key sharing technique, high-level crime, right? So it is possible that they could be compelled to talk. So that's why I'm mentioning that. Yeah, so we talked about the registrations of the attachments. What else? I'm going to talk about a little bit about these. I'm going to leave for another demo. But yes, the reassignment of cases. So I got an email from the clerk of Fort Bend County, who is named in this federal lawsuit that we were talking about before. And in the email, she says that they're reassigning cases. Like, they created 2 new courts, and they're randomly reassigning cases. I don't know. I haven't seen. Actually, I think one of my cases got reassigned there. I'm not sure. But now that I think about it, the numbers that she said in the email, I think the traffic ticket. No, sorry, the other one. The HOA. I can't recall. I have to check. I don't want to give you wrong information, but what I wanted to mention is that they created 2 courts, and they're reassigning the cases, right? I mean, randomly, supposedly, right? So I imagine it's a way to create noise and introduce. I mean, they think that they're going to destroy the link between Telfair and the kidnapping, right? So I imagine the case of the kidnapping is going to be reassigned to a new judge that then is going to say, oh, we made a mistake, and then they're going to roll it back that way without the need for an appeal. Could be an exit strategy, right? They're naive like that. If they think that they can kidnap a child and not pay the consequences. I imagine, right? Like, at the end, authorities are going to do the right thing and put them in jail. Well, I hope, right? That's what happens. Yes, there are so many cases. The other thing I wanted to say on the case of the HOA, right, which is the 286th court. There's several anomalies in the docket that got flagged by the pipeline last night. No, sorry, 2 days ago. Can't recall the last time I ran it, but they got flagged after the hearing because I did not see them. If I had seen them before the hearing, I would have taken action, but I did not see them. So it must have been after the 12th, right, or on the 12th after the hearing. I don't know. I have to check, but they got flagged. Things on the docket, right? So this is docket manipulation. One is they mark on the docket, there is a field for the attorney of the defendant, so the attorney of the corporation, and they put pro se. I have to check, but I think pro se only applies to people. The corporation cannot be pro se. And it's in the law. The law says that the corporation needs an attorney, right? So they are putting pro se there to imply, to put something in the record that ties me personally, to say that me and the corporation were the same entity, right? That's what they're saying, basically, with that small comment, right? That's one thing. The other thing is that in the entry for the hearing on the 12th of February, the judge entered that the attorneys for the plaintiff appear, but nobody appeared for the corporation, that they called, but nobody responded. And that is not true. I mean, I wasn't representing the corporation, but I was there present, responding to the notice of hearing they sent. So they're making it sound like it was a no-show, right? And that justifies, and he put something like default order enter, right? So he created a justification to enter a void order himself on the same docket. Like, so he's creating a justification for his own misconduct by tampering with the docket, because this is not true. I was there, and he said on the record, I'm noting that your presence in this hearing, something like that. Like, I'm noting that you appear, something like that he said, right? So, I mean, it's contradictory, right? But this is just to create pretexts and justifications. Again, I think it's naivete in that they think that this is going to wash out the responsibility, right, for the misconduct that they're, incurring on. But that's what they did, right? So they tampered with the docket in those three ways. They marked pro se, so that the corporation is acting pro se, which legally doesn't make sense. Secondly, and it's not the reality, right? Because I said that the corporation needs to retain an attorney, and he granted a hearing for that. So, and then he said that they called, but nobody responded, which is not true. I was in the hearing. And I pointed to the problem, right? And then they said that a default order was entered, which is not true. He said that he was going to schedule a hearing for the 24th. So, like, they're just tampering with the docket to create confusion, right? I think it's to create confusion and to kind of create a pretext that, this was just a clerical mistake, like to leverage the clerk to justify the judicial misconduct. I think that's probably what's going on. But again, I guess this is a job for somebody at the DOJ to audit this docket, right, and this judge, and to see if this is a common occurrence on this court, right? Because that's the other problem. I mean, who else could have been attacked in this way? Right? Find other targets. Yes, the other comment I have is that Larry Ryan and Jenny Ryan disappeared from the internet. So, and I know they were there before because I have in the pipeline months ago ingested data and found pictures of them. But now they disappeared. Like, if you do a Google for Larry Ryan in Katy, Texas, the real Larry Ryan doesn't come up anywhere. You see people from New York, from other places, but you don't see anybody from Katy. And the same with Jenny Ryan. She also disappeared from the internet. But you imagine this is in response to the posts, the videos that I recorded, right? Yes, so I think that's what I have for today. I'll make another one later. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you on the next one. Oh, no, sorry. I'll tell you another thing. This is something I got from the informant yesterday. So apparently, they have another plan in the works, okay? I'm just gonna record. I mean, I think it's silly at this point because poor woman, like they don't know what else to do with her. But apparently, right, the plan is to ask, I mean, this is something that is being discussed. I don't know if they're going to do it, right? But the plan is to ask my former partner, Gloria, to file a complaint with the police for sexual harassment or cyberbullying, right? And the justification for that is that I mentioned her name in one of these videos or in two of these videos, right? So through all this time, over the last 10 months that she has had the child and that she took the child without a court order and all that, I had not mentioned her name, but I did mention her name twice or three times in the last two videos, and then they're gonna call that cyberbullying, okay? That's what they're thinking, right? That's where their head is at this point. And they're gonna say, I mean, this is what the informant told me, right? That they're gonna say that that my motivation for supposedly, allegedly, cyberbullying her is because I had made romantic advances on her and she refused. So I'm taking revenge, basically, right? That's what they're going to say. Apparently, that's the plan. That's what they're thinking. But I have to say, this is ridiculous, right? Because, I mean, if I was going to take revenge for anything, it would be for the kidnapping of the child, which has been going on for almost 11 months at this point, right? And I haven't. And I said multiple times that, you know, if I'm thinking of anything is on, you know, how to save the money to pay for her attorney, for a criminal attorney to defend her when, you know, that time comes, which I'm sure will come, right? So, you know, I'm not in a mindset to harm her in any way, on the opposite. But that's what they're going to claim, right? Or what they're thinking on claiming. That's the idea that they have. And the justification is, and this is the funny part, right? So over the last few days, I mean, the last 2 weeks or something, right? You know, if you're following this saga, you will see that I'm a person that tries to take these things with a sense of humor, right? Because it's I don't know, call it a coping mechanism, call it whatever you want, but I don't know, that's the way I deal with this, right? I try to see the humor in the darkness of all this. So over the last 2 weeks, right, I've been kind of playing a game with her, not with her, but like kidding with her, like joking, right? Like I say things jokingly. I'm gonna give you an example, right? So the last time she came to the house with the kid on Thursday, when she came across so we entered the property through the side gate of the yard, right? So when she came in, I did this joke where I got on my knees and I reached out into my pocket as if I was going to get an engagement ring and take it out to propose, right? And this is, of course, a joke. I mean, this is a joke because, I mean, for so many reasons, right? First of all, you know, she's suing me for divorce and we're not even married, right? So, you know, I mean, if we're not even married, right? And she's suing me for divorce and, you know, did all these things and, you know, the motion for psychiatric evaluation and all that. Imagine what she would do if we were actually married. It would be a crazy thing for me to do to actually propose, right? So it's a joke. It's just a silly joke, right? Or more recently, right? Because it's Valentine's Day today, I sent her a message asking her if she would be my Valentine, right? And it's a joke because, you know, with all these things that she's done, you know, with the attorneys and the lawyers and all that, and secreting the child for 50 days, of course, you know, like, from my side at least, it's a joke. But when I said that if she wanted to be my Valentine, she said no, right? And when I, you know, this fake proposal, she said no as well, right? She told me that my timing was off and that I was too late, and you know, so they're gonna say what they're planning, right, is to take those comments out of context because they were really jokes, but they're gonna make it look like that was a proposal and she rejected it, right? And when I asked her if she would be my Valentine, that was a rejection as well, and because she rejected me, I am taking this stance of mentioning her name, and that is cyberbullying and revenge, right? And then she's gonna file a complaint with the police, right, to harass me with I mean, she already created 2 lawsuits, right? So the family court, the William Kyle Adams and all those people, Then the one of the HOA, because really she did not perform the duty of renewing the register, the registration, right, of the agreement with the registered agent in Delaware, which led to these people putting pro se in the docket, right? And now, they would be asking her to now, after all this, then go to the Fort Bend County Police and file a police report for cyberbullying. That's why I say, poor woman, like these people are gonna drive her crazy. I imagine, sorry, there's an ambulance passing by. But I imagine this must be a stressful situation for her, particularly because they've been promising her for a year that they will put me out of circulation, and they haven't been able to put me out of circulation. So she has to be, of course, I know her, she's an intelligent woman. She has to be questioning their capabilities, their competence, their basic competence on even being criminals. She has to question how good of a criminals these are that are not even able to do this, right? So, and now, after a year of trying, they're going to ask her again to now fabricate a police report. She's a smart woman. She's a super smart person. She's not going to say yes to that, I imagine, right? So, but anyhow, according to the informant, that is the plan, right? That is the new plan that they came up with. But you see, the weakness of this is that all their plans seem to rely on Gloria, right? And again, Gloria is the one that has the most liability and that holds the proof of collusion between the Adams law firm, Justice Terry Adams, Telfair, and the Roberts, Markell, Weinberg, Haley, Butler, PC attorneys, right? So they're thinking. Think how silly this is, really, purely from a tactical legal point of view, right? So they're thinking of engaging the person with the highest liability and the strongest proof of collusion to commit another crime for them, right? It's silly. It's just like it feels like they want to self-destruct, honestly. But anyhow, that's where their head is at. So that gives you an idea of the level of desperation, right? I think that is the deeper implication of that, right? That they're really, really desperate to go to the extent of even considering this option. Right? But anyhow, that's what the informant told me. Of course, if they do it, what it really means is, well, that the informant is right and that they're working, all of them, for Diosdado Cabello. Like, there's no other way to read if this really happens, right? Because honestly, it was just a joke. But, it's gotten to the point that even a joke, they want to try to take it out of context and create you can take the joke out of context and get upset, or, she has the option to get upset with me and, tell me to not make those jokes, whatever, right? But they're going to turn this into a criminal charge, right? Because that's the only thing they know how to do, like harass people with the judges that they own. That's it. So there is one more item that I would like to add to the to the conversation or the topic about the satellite vision applied to transmitting messages in that way, right? Messages and also encryption keys. So I was thinking about all that, and obviously there is a challenge, right? Which is what happens at night, because at night there is no, the amount of light, natural light that is, on the environment is lower. So this makes this system not work at night in natural conditions, right? And even with the street lighting, it would not work because the colors would look like grayscale tones, like tones of gray from a satellite. So this poses a series of challenges, but at the same time, it also has implications that, if analyzed, could help detection, right? So, for example, one of the things that I was checking is these trucks with the attachments, with the objects that the bright objects, in all the footage that I have, and I have a lot of footage, because I've been recording this footage with the car for almost 2 years at this point. So in all that footage, there's I couldn't find programmatically, right? Maybe maybe the precision of my system is not enough. There could be occurrences that did not get flagged, but I could not see, and I also cannot remember myself personally, any instances in which these trucks with attachments are seen at night. So it seems like, at least in Katy, right, in this area that is a hub, it seems like these trucks with these attachments full of equipment, they only circulate during the day, which would make sense, right, because they're only used during the day, but for communicating with the satellite. But you can think, well, but yes, because these are work trucks, and but like, think about it, right? Over a period of 2 years, all the times that I've gone out with all these cameras, right, 7 cameras mounted on the vehicle, and in not one occasion, in none of those instances, any of these landscapers happen to be having dinner with their family after work. I don't know, right? Like, it's unlikely. Like, I should have seen at least one, right? But I haven't, and I think probably it's because they don't work. I mean, at night they're not useful for what their real purpose is, right? So it's not, it's not a confirmation, but so yes, right? That it's like could be like a secondary signal. The other thing that I was thinking is that like, because of this limitation of the sunlight, being absent, I mean direct sunlight, right, during the night, and the network is a global network, so therefore they must communicate at night. So how do they do it? Like, how do they transmit these messages and these keys, the encryption keys, securely during the nighttime? I mean, they have to have a way, right? So I mean, probably, I imagine, right, what they do is that not everybody has the capability of getting secure keys during the night. Only special agents, like special people, right? Like the people that need to have secure communication 24/7. And I thought of different ways of doing it that I think could be, right? So let me give you a few examples. So one is, and I've mentioned this before in one of the demos, is that on the back of the property of Robert Mueller here at Lake Pointe Estates, there's a church, right? And in that church, there is a field, it's like an empty lot of grass. And in that empty lot, during the night, very often, if not every night, there's people playing soccer until like late hours, I don't know, 11 p.m. You would see, and they have like, high power lighting. Like, it looks almost like a stadium, like illuminated, very well illuminated, right? I don't know. It crossed my mind. I cannot prove it, of course, but I mean, and that church is marked in the index, and there's been incidents like with me in that church, right? I mean, in the parking lot of the church. But it occurred to me that maybe those soccer matches at night with those, high power lighting equipment, maybe it's just a pretext, right? It's just a pretext to have people there to be able to move bright objects that are illuminated by this light, so they are visible from a satellite during the night. Like, if you take a field of, like a grass field, and you turn on, industrial lighting on top of it, and you put, orange cones and things that are bright on top of the field, it will be visible from the satellite with color at night. So it could be a way to generate the seed, the visual cue for, to encode the seed for the encryption key, so in a way that is visible for a satellite during the night. So that's one possible solution. Using things that, like terrain that is illuminated, right? Like very well illuminated. It could be like, stadiums, parking lots that have, a high-grade industrial lighting. It also could work, I think, with boats, like vessels on the ocean. If the vessels have, good lighting on board, like on the surface of the ship, it would work, because the surrounding, if you have a ship in the ocean, the surrounding area is very dark, So, with relatively good lighting, you could achieve the same effect because of the contrast with, with the surroundings that are basically pitch black at night, right, in the ocean. Another possibility that I thought of, I mean, this would be misuse, right? So I'm guessing that it's not something that is easy to pull off in the US because of the regulations, right? But maybe in other countries where regulations are weak, it's possible to do this, but it could be possible to use, for example, the lining in the airport landing strips, like those airport lighting, that are used to guide the plane. Because those lights have special characteristics that make them very visible, even if there's fog and conditions like that. Even if the weather is bad, the pilots can still see those lights. So, misusing those lights could be a way to also encode signals. In fact, those lights are used to encode signals for the pilots. They don't think that they just signal direction. They signal different things, conditions in the weather, instructions like that. Those lights are used to send structured data to the pilot. So they could be misused for the same purpose, right? I mean, to encode encryption keys that could be visible from a satellite. I mean, they don't need to misuse the light all the time. They just need to misuse them during, a few seconds, right, to encode the key when they need to change the keys. So things like that, right? So there's a few, I mean, and I'm sure there are more examples, right? But basically the idea would be to look for which situations could serve as a pretext to have a well-lit area at night, with conditions that would be good enough for a satellite to distinguish color, because that's the key, right? That is, the color is the feature that they need to see from the satellite. So as long as they can distinguish the colors, they can do it at night, right? But they need lighting, or I don't know, maybe there's another way to do it. But the interesting thing was that those soccer matches next to, and it's literally on the back of the property of Robert Mueller. Now, this is also interesting because it means that in the case of Mueller, like for example, in the previous segment, I hypothesized that maybe Mueller could be like a tier 2, right, kind of level of security. And I hypothesized that maybe the seed for his key is placed somewhere else, like not in the same physical location. But if this is the case, if that's what they're doing with that soccer field or that church, lot on the back of his house, it means that his security level in this communication system is actually a bit lower than I thought, right? Like they did not go to the extent of putting his encryption seed in a different geolocation. It's actually on near his property. So as long as the visual cue is near his property, that is used. I mean, if that's what they're doing with that soccer field, right? But anyhow, I just wanted to mention that, right? That I thought that the limitation during the night, and that of course has implications, right? I mean, other implications. It means that the security of the network is weaker at night. So if an agency or I don't know, an investigator is trying to eavesdrop on their communications, it's probably easier to do it at night because they can't rotate the key. They have to keep using the keys that they were using during the day. And in this field, I can tell you from experience that the longer you use the key, the more likely is that they can decrypt because they get more samples, right? And the more samples they have, the higher the probability that they will break the encryption. So for the longer time that you use the same key, the more exposed you are. So I guess, that means that at night, this network is more insecure than during the day, because during the day, they can rotate the keys multiple times. But at night, they have to, survive in a way with the last key that they got during the daylight, during the daytime. And I don't know, I think that also means that for the people that are more important, they probably rotate the key. I mean, I think this implies that there's probably a routine. And routines are dangerous because they can be exploited. But I imagine, right, if I was them, I would make it so that the people that is more concerning, that their security is more important, I would make sure to rotate the key at the end of the day, right? To make sure that they have a fresh key for the night. So this makes it predictable, right? Like watching these locations at the end of the day is probably a good idea because, they might do the thing with the truck and the attachment and the landscaper and all that to rotate the keys at night. So that is a good opportunity to catch these events, right? To observe them, to be able to reverse engineer the encoders, which I think should be the goal probably, right? So I don't know, just a few random thoughts about the implications of this system being dependent on daylight. And that is a property that can be exploited.